Hello and welcome to Storytelling with Ngozi. I am your host, Ngozi Edeba. Today's story is The Big Bad Wolf. Once upon a time, there was a sweet little girl. Her name was Lily. She lived with her mom and dad in a beautiful house at the edge of a village. On the other end of the village lived her grandmother in a cute little house. The little girl was loved by everyone in the village. Her grandmother loved her the most and gave her lots of beautiful presents. The best present her grandmother gave her was a hooded red coat, which she wore everywhere. So, the people in her village called her Little Red Riding Hood instead of by her real name, Lily. One day, Little Red Riding Hood and her family got a message that her grandmother was ill. So Little Red Riding Hood's mom packed some cakes, bread, butter, cheese, ham, and eggs in a basket and gave them to her little girl to take to her grandmother, who lived at the other end of the village. In those days, there were no cars, buses, or trains, so Little Red Riding Hood had to walk for a long time to get to her grandmother's house. But she was happy to go all the way to the other end of the village because she loved her grandmother so much. Before setting out, her mother warned her to stay on the path leading to her grandmother's house and not wander into the wild. Her mom also warned her not to speak with anyone on her way to her grandmother's house. She promised not to and set out on her journey to her grandmother. It was a beautiful day. Everything was gorgeous outside. The flowers looked amazing, especially the wild ones. And Little Red Riding Hood loves wild flowers. So she stopped to pick a bunch for her grandmother. How sweet. She soon got carried away though and wandered away from her path into the scary wild. At first, everything seemed normal. All she could hear was herself walking in the wild. But suddenly, she heard another noise. She looked around her and did not see anything at first. Then she heard the sound again, and a big wolf jumped right in front of her. She was not scared because she thought the wolf was cute, not knowing she could become his dinner. "Where are you going and what is in your basket?" he asked. "I am taking some cakes, bread, butter, cheese, ham, and eggs to my grandmother who is ill," she replied. "Where does your grandmother live?" the wolf asked. "She lives in a little house along the path, past the wide rose bushes at the very end of the village," she told the wolf. "You be on your way, little girl, and have a great day." And the wolf went on his way. He looked for the little house at the end of the village and got there before Red Riding Hood could. He knocked on the door as soon as he arrived. "Who is there?" asked the grandmother. "Little Red Riding Hood," the wolf replied in the coolest voice ever. "You may come in. The door is unlocked," she said. The wolf got in and tried to jump at her, but she jumped out of her bed and ran into the closet, shutting the door behind her. The wolf then took her cap, which she had dropped on the floor while she jumped out of the bed. He then crept under her bed sheets and covers, took her glasses from the bedside table, put them on, pretending to be Red Riding Hood's grandmother. Not long after that, little Red Riding Hood arrived. She turned the door handle to let herself in. "Hello, Grandma," she said. "I brought you some flowers that I picked on my way here." She walked towards the bed to her grandmother and soon noticed something was a bit off. "Oh, Grandma, you look different. Why does your eyes, ears, and nose look bigger?" "They are bigger because I need my ears to hear you better, my eyes to see you better, and my nose to smell you better," the wolf replied. "Okay. What about your teeth? They look bigger as well." Then the wolf sprang towards the little girl. "They are bigger to eat you," replied the hungry wolf. The girl jumped off immediately, running towards the door and screaming at the same time. The farmer next door was passing by at this very moment and heard the screams. He came in and chopped off the wolf's head just before the wolf could get to the little girl. What a relief. The farmer now helped Grandma out of the closet. Everyone was happy that little Red Riding Hood is safe, and they all lived happily thereafter. What a beautiful stories that children have heard over the years. But there's one thing that stood out in this story. What stood out is the need for my little friends to obey, to listen to instructions that they are given. Little Red Riding Hood got the instructions: stay on the path leading to your grandmother's house, do not speak to anyone. If she had stayed on the path, she would not have met the wolf. And she did something wrong again. She spoke to the wolf, and she gave the wolf information that the wolf did not need to have. So there is always the need to follow instructions, because not following instructions could cost us our lives, as it almost did to little Red Riding Hood before the farmer came and saved the day. We all want to follow instructions that we're given. Go over to this episode's webpage for this episode's activity that you can do this week. We have now come to the end of this episode. If you have enjoyed this episode, remember to give it some thumbs up. And if you're listening to it on your podcast, head over to iTunes or wherever you watch or wherever you listen to your podcast to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. And remember to join next Monday for another episode of Storytelling with Ngozi.